from any health issues too, or any other?
You speak up.
Were there any other members of the base besides Peniston and that suffered from any health issues?
Not that I know of. I've had none from that. I was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam, and that caused some issues, but that had nothing to do with the UFO.
Next, sir. You, sir.
Yeah, Nick Pope suggested we ask Colonel Halt about the visitors that you had to the base in the aftermath of this incident, suggesting that you had some visitors that would have been, from high levels in the U.S. government. Can you speak about that?
We had a constant flow of people coming in and a constant flow of strange planes. There were a lot of planes that were classified at that time, especially reconnaissance type planes. Stealth aircraft actually came in there. U-2s actually came in from time to time, and we would shelter them in the hangar. A large cargo plane came in very soon thereafter, as I remember, but I don't remember exactly why. But it was a busy base. There was a lot of activity there.
So Colonel, did you feel that you were seeing more activity than usual?
I didn't associate it at that time.
Thank you.
Next row. Okay, we'll go with you, sir.
Yeah, I want to find out, you were talking about symbols before. Have you been investigating or are you privy to some of the crop circle symbols that happen in England all the time?
Yeah, I've crop circles is not really my specialist subject. I've certainly seen, obviously, many of them. I am aware that some people are attempting to look at them in terms of mathematical and geometric symbols. I'm also aware that there are some pictograms which purport to be, for example, a response to the famous signal that Frank Drake sent out in, what was it called, Project Ozma, I think, back in, the 60s, I believe. But I'm not personally part of any of that research or investigation, so I can't really say how scientific it was.
Okay, you, sir.
Any speculation as to where the object came from at all? Just pure speculation.
Well, there seem to be three competing theories. For those who favor an exotic explanation, there seem to be three competing theories. One, extraterrestrial spacecraft. Two, interdimensional intrusion of some sort. Three, intertemporal visitation, time travel. I really couldn't call it, but one kind of fascinating thing. There are very few scientists doing research into time travel, but one who is called Professor Ronald Mallett. And one thing that Professor Mallett has spoken about was the possibility of sending a message into the past. And he said that the way you would do it would be through neutrino decay, radioactive decay. And a neutrino has spin which can be either positive or negative, top or bottom, whatever they call it. And effectively that would be a way to kind of send a binary message. And of course it's interesting that what did we find at the landing site? But radioactivity levels. So I throw that in purely as speculation. I don't know where to go with those three theories. But for anyone who says to you, oh, time travel is just nonsense, look up Professor Ronald Mallett and have a look at some of his papers on the subject.
Okay, you, sir.
Could you address the binary code issue? I didn't hear it mentioned at all. It's kind of related to what he was asking.
Yeah, I didn't have time to get into this, but as well as the symbols that Jim Peniston saw and sketched, when he touched the side of the craft, he kind of received what he could only describe as a sort of telepathic download of ones and zeros. And he kept this quiet for many, many years. Why? He was still in the service. he would have lost his PRP, his what is it, personnel reliability? Yeah. A degree of people with particularly sensitive, highly classified responsibilities have this kind of extra enhanced vetting, this PRP. Jim's not gonna. It's okay for him to say he's seen a UFO because the deputy base commander's seen one. So hell, it's okay for him. It's okay for me. But to say you've got a telepathic download of ones and zeros, that's kind of a bridge too far. So I don't blame him for keeping it quiet. And he didn't know what it meant, but yeah, he, as if under a compulsion, later wrote out 16 pages of ones and zeros. Later, a TV program was shooting a film with Jim. They wanted to see the sketches, and this is almost comedy. He said, oh, let me find the page so that you can film it. And then somebody looked over his shoulder. He wasn't even going to mention this. He said, what are those ones and zeros? He said, oh, that's the kind of code that I got when I touched the thing. And he was like, what? What code? So History Channel sent it to a computer programmer called Nick Sisk. And Nick Sisk came up with a provisional translation which read, exploration of humanity, continuous for planetary advance, eyes of your eyes, origin year 8100, and a whole bunch of what looked like latitudinal and longitudinal coordinates that just so happened to match, for example, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Sedona, the Temple of Apollo on Naxos, the Nazca lines in Peru. Work on this is ongoing, and Jim has subsequently teamed up with an esoteric author called John Osborne, and they are working on a full-length book called the Rendlesham Code, which is going to go much, much deeper into this. And I've not been privy to this, but they have I've had to take a step back for a number of reasons, but that should be out in December.
What about High Brazil? Isn't that one of them?
Yeah, High Brazil was one of the other coordinates. Now, High Brazil is mythical. It's sometimes called the Celtic Atlantis. In Celtic mythology, there is this story of this lost world inhabited by people who were technologically advanced. And again, this is a remarkably cross-cultural myth that we find in human history, in all these different parts of the world.
I got to go back to people, so forgive me. I'll come back to the front. Let's go to the fourth row now. You, sir.
This is a follow-on to the question that was posed about additional people showing up shortly after the incident. And the question, I think, at least initially, is directed to Colonel Halt. And that question is, we've heard through various shows and various other recounting of the incidents that some of the enlisted people said that they did have these encounters with somewhat mysterious people who seemed to show up, seemed to have authority, and were at a minimum intimidating, and in some cases attempting to get these enlisted men to take various drugs. Is that in fact correct, or is that just some kind of embellishment?
I have serious doubts about that. I have no knowledge of it. I can tell you things did go on at the base occasionally that, the hierarchy was not fully aware of. But most of that had to do with, how should I say, foreign intelligence and espionage and things of that nature.
Yeah, and normally a procedure for getting somebody from the United States, say, to a base, the typical thing would be passing the clearances through the security organizations and then letting officials in charge know that various senior level people have passed their clearances. Wouldn't that be the case?
We almost universally knew if somebody of any rank was coming.
Yeah.
It was well known and briefed, in the morning, and we talked about it and had plan of attack, so to speak.
So perhaps those, the allegations about that aspect of the story may not be correct.
I would have serious doubts.
Yeah.
I mean, it is notoriously difficult to untangle this, what with multiple witnesses telling sometimes conflicting stories. Throw into the mix all these allegations of drugs and hypnosis used in interrogation. I mean, one interesting thing that I think we were discussing very briefly in the interval was, some people say, oh, you can't do that anyway, because after the church committee, they said you can't use regression hypnosis or drugs in an interrogation. We found a 1980 Air Force Office of Special Investigations manual, which said, if you wish to use hypnosis or drugs in an interrogation, you should seek permission from higher authority. Obviously, if you weren't allowed to use them, it would just say you're not allowed to use them.
Right. We
No,
got
at
5
that
minutes
time-
left, so
At that
anybody-
time, NIS, now they call it NCIS, I guess, on TV, but Naval Intelligence had intelligence responsibility for Great Britain as far as the U.S. is concerned. The military divides up the world, different services take different agencies. Peniston and Burroughs and several others said when they were interrogated, it was a naval officer from the embassy and other people from an M agency in Great Britain, I don't know which one, they didn't know which one, and another civilian. The local OSI people did not debrief them. It was done in their facility, but it was done by outsiders. A Navy lieutenant commander was one of them. His name was Richardson, as they remember.
5 minutes left, so if we can cram the questions and, of course, the answers. We'll go to Kim first, and then I'm going to jump to you, sir.
That red orb that you saw that was elliptical with the dark hair in it, have you run across any other cases that have sounded similar to what you saw?
Yes. In fact, I have dozens of cases that occurred in a similar timeframe, earlier or later, even in recent times. In that area, that's what I say. There's something attractive, for some reason, there's a lot of sightings in that area. At one time, I thought it was something we have on the base. We've closed the base, so that would have gone away. But there's still all the other things around there and the funny happenings.
Anything in the US like that, or just there?
Oh, well, I'm not going to go into all the details, but people talk about reptilian things, all kinds of strange tales. How true they are, I don't know. There's some very credible people that had nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward, if you know what I mean, that have sent me stuff, and I didn't read everything I have. I've got volumes and volumes and volumes of stuff, but there's too many funny happenings there.
Is the next person here?
The policewoman who experienced or saw something on the second night,
Bonnie Tamplin.
yes, she was adversely affected by the experience or by the interrogation.
As far as I know, she wasn't interrogated. I don't know. I do know something happened to her. She was a normal, rational person, that I knew, and in fact, I kind of mentored her a little bit because I really felt for her, because she was in a difficult situation, being female, minority, with all the tough, beat 'em up cops. And she disappeared. And I said to Mel Zickler, who was the squadron commander, what happened to Bonnie? He said she had a nervous breakdown. And I accepted that. And she was gone. I mean, within days. It took me years to chase her down.
And
She didn't respond. She's in Italy. I found her sister.
Just a couple more questions left, so before I get back to you, sir, I got to finish the back of the row. So I'll take you, then you, and then hopefully you wrap up. Go ahead.
In the many documentaries and reports about this case, they mentioned very summarily the locals around the base, and I wonder if you've met some people.
You're going to have to speak up. I can't understand.
Oh, the local witnesses
The
you're
local
asking about.
witnesses, they don't really talk much about them, and we never had any witness coming out.
Read my book. There's about 400 or 500 in there.
Yeah, the thing is that
Names, dates, places.
when TV networks cover this case, obviously